Thank you. Again, they're handouts. You can put an email down so we can email the question and the answers to you. If we don't have them tonight, we'll try to do that. So just some ground rules. Really don't want to get into discussions about personnel and students or programs that we really want to keep it more general about programming and personnel, not anything specific. It's just healthier that way. So if you got some issues on the site you want to talk, we'll talk. But for the large group, try to keep it at that level. It's helpful. So we have board members here tonight. If you just raise your hand, the back right up front. Thank you for coming. And I got staff here, central office staff. Raise your hands. Okay. And I think, I'm not sure, I might have some teachers here. So, Joe, let's go to the second page now. It's like anything, there's got to be a purpose for what we do. We try to anchor on this as best we can. And we try to develop the knowledge and skills in our students so they're responsible citizens in our global society. And there are some beliefs in these things that we do look at them when we put together the budget. Budget is really a plan to get somewhere. I mean, that's really what it is, and that's what we try to get to. And those are the beliefs that children are our first priority. Sometimes it gets in the way of what adults want to do, but it is our first priority, and we need to be mindful of that and remind ourselves that is the primary purpose. Why they're here, why the board's here, why I'm here, is to work for our youngsters as best we can. Try to make best practice decisions. These decisions sometimes I might not agree with, teachers may not agree with, parents may not agree with, but the research empirically says it's the right thing to do, and we try to adjust it to the Danbury way, and we try to focus on those things so that we can improve instruction and education of our youngsters. We try to partner with parents. I think Kevin and Ann, where's Dr. in the back there? They've been running focus groups throughout the fall, working on a plan on how we can engage parents at more meaningful levels than that we have. So that's part of our belief. If you walk around the teacher's classroom, all children do it, and they really do believe that. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. It's a simple statement, declarative statement, but it really takes a human effort to get everybody engaged and committed to the work and be able to plan and challenge students at each level. I commend them all the time about that. We have high expectations, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and accountability. A safe and productive learning environment. We're working at that all the time. Being close to Sandy Hook, we're extra sensitive. We know that. So things happen, and we always wonder, how much do we share? We try to share as much as we can, but we try to make sure the board has been supportive of providing the kind of environment and support that there's safety advocates and there's training going on, and very mindful of making sure we have a safe climate for the teachers and for our youngsters. Next page. So all of those efforts, I mean, you're going to hear this a lot. 7 elementary schools named schools of distinction. That's a big deal. That's based on growth. There's only one other district in the whole state that achieved that, and that was Greenwich. And there's a differential between how they do business and how we do business. Our business is done on the backs of the folks in red right there, and their efforts each and every day. It's appreciated. The year before, we had 6 elementary schools named. Danbury High School is very tough for a large high school like ours. It's based on different attributes when they come in and they evaluate the high school, and they were placed on a monitoring list. But through the teachers' efforts and administrators, they were removed from that focus list. And that took quite a bit of work on their part to get it done, and they are. And then this year they're preparing for NEASC, which for us, it's our accreditation that we go through. So they're in a prime position for accreditation. They're doing a self-study, then a group comes in. These are all things that they look at when they accredit that diploma, and colleges look at Danbury High School. They know we have an accredited high school, and that's very important. We provide a lot of opportunity with support from the town and the board in early college programming. We've talked about that a number of times, where youngsters will go through in 4 years through working with mentors and career aspirations, taking courses, can actually leave high school. We had 2 students last year with an associate degree and a high school diploma, and time put into if they decide to go to a college, quite a bit of money in terms of tuition waivers, because they'll have associate degrees. And in this state, it could go to any college with their articulated agreement. They go to UConn, they go anywhere they want, and they'll get those credits, and it'll actually count towards graduation. We're in our 4th year of that. Our Weston's Connecticut Academy was named a Green Ribbon School, 2018, and we have articles that go out. Our teachers are getting awards, and administrators are getting awards. They're called on to do national curriculum. They're called on to do state curriculum. We have some outstanding leaders in the classrooms that are doing the work for us, and we greatly appreciate it and their efforts and their leadership. Next page. So what does that got to do with budgets? You know, you don't do the things that you saw on that page serendipitously or by happenstance. It's got to be a mindful plan strategically, and there has to be support to do it. So, you know, we work closely with our officials in town. I mean, the town has their issues, and I get that. We have our issues. Our issues are maybe different, but, you know, I feel the most important. We're the student advocates and have to put that forward as we work with the town. We meet with the town regularly and talk about our budget and our needs. The budget assumes flat funding, and what that means, the state, we don't know what the state was going to do when we developed the budget. We have a better idea right now. Vermont has been supportive of what we call education cost saving grant. What that meant for Danbury was quite a bit of money. Danbury has been involved in a lawsuit for about the last 15 years. We're about $30 million short of where we should be in terms of the kind of support we should be getting from the state. The past 8 years, we've been getting support in what they call an alliance grant. So whatever the town was getting, there was an amount put above that. That amount that was put above that is about $10.2 million next year, is to be. And that money, the town of Danbury has let alone, has come to us so we can use in our classroom to improve instruction and do that. So that money is added to it. When we put the budget together, we didn't know there was going to be a $2.3 million part of that budget going forward by Governor Lamont. And it's in his proposal. Now, where it ends up in June, we don't know. So we didn't think it was wise for us to make the assumption the money was going to be there, when in fact it could be reduced. So we made the assumption that's the term flat funding. But we're keeping our eye on that, rest assured about that. Next one. So key budget elements. It doesn't take much. If you're around the schools, you can see now there are kids in the hallway, there are kids on the stages doing their work. And not too many years ago, we added 18 classrooms, probably about 8 years ago. We also put some expansions at Shelter Rock 3 years ago. This past year, the board provided 8 over at the west side. We're filling them up. So it's not about talking anybody into, we might have kids, the kids are here, they're growing. The classes have gone from about 700 per class to 900. And that's what we're seeing throughout as they matriculate up through the district. So that enrollment impacts the work that we do. Just on sheer numbers, we're at 11,500. Interesting, when I arrived in 06, our free and reduced rate was somewhere around 33% as a district average. We're now at 53%, and we have some schools at 90% free and reduced lunch. And the research tells us that the one thing that really challenges teachers and students from learning is not their ethnicity. That's a blessing. It's their socioeconomic status. So the poorer the kids are, the less likely are they're going to have the tools and the arrows in the quiver to come prepared. We have to provide more work and more time for them at school, and that's what we're noticing. Budget has to be sensitive to those strategies on extending the day, summer programming. It doesn't just happen. It's a plan that we do. We're going to do an overview of the budget with Joe in a few minutes. As numbers grow, part of our needs to support students would be in our area of special needs students, and all students need help. But what's really wonderful in Danbury, our kids are capable and able. As I said a few minutes ago, they just need more time. You know, intellectually they're fine. If they, you know, you can see them just blossom. I'll go into a school and someone will say, you know, when that child got here in September, couldn't communicate, look at that person, getting up, talking, participating. It can be done. It's done, as I said, on their backs right there, but it's also done with good practice and giving them support and some time. But in Danbury, we give them support, and then we try to give them a call, what they should be getting in the classroom at the same time. So that's part of developing this budget. So you'll get support, but you're going to be in a classroom, generally speaking, to get the normal core curriculum as well. So that's what we build our budget on. Budget totals updated, salaries due to contractual changes. Joe, you can deal with that, but you want to put the budget on right now? Okay, go ahead next. Good. We'll talk about enrollment. Go ahead.
Evening, everybody. As Dr. Sal alluded to, it would be the backdrop of this budget always, every year, in my time here, has been to do with your enrollment. As you can see by this chart, McMillan and McBroom just completed a study the Board of Education conducted, and the red line obviously is Danbury's current growth. The blue line represents the state average. And as folks read in the papers, surrounding towns are decreasing enrollment. Danbury is continuing to grow at 1 to 2% every year. Demographers have looked at our data, and really we are truly an anomaly across the state. There are, I believe, 5 to 6 districts across the state that are actually seeing growth, and Danbury clearly is one. Pre-K to 12 enrollment, as Dr. Sal alluded to, you really had back in the 04, 05, about 9,500 students, and now we're going through that 11,500. And just again, growth, we added the 18 classrooms with all-day kindergarten, went through those, the additions on Shelter Rock, and as folks know, we really have utilized every available space we have in our classrooms. That is the good news and the bad news some days about what we've done. Projections. We just recently completed an enrollment projection study. What you'll see on the graph here, obviously you've got kind of demographers do like a low, medium, and high. So they make an estimate on what they think it will be on the low side. So basically, low side we stay flat on growth. But their basic projections, we continue to add about 1% to 1.5% every year ongoing throughout the coming years. A lot of that growth is coming from the west side, we think. There is significant growth in the King Street area. Those sides, the demographer did drill out those areas. We continue to see growth there, particularly coming from the new developments that happen on that side of town. We also still see growth in the downtown area. Our Ellsworth neighborhoods, I mean, there's still continued population there that's coming into our schools. Enrollment data, as Dr. Sal said too, the changing demographics of our kids. So you now have free reduced lunch numbers, 66%. This data goes back to 2010. Again, our bilingual trends that are growing, increases in sped populations, and it all drives additional support needed to our students. Cost per student. You'll hear a lot of times references to what's called a net per pupil number. That is a calculation that the state of Connecticut runs through the data set that basically calculates a net per pupil across all towns in Connecticut. They try to make everybody equal. So in other words, they take out a bonding project. So for example, a $60 million renovation of a high school, a small town might do a $2 million project. They take out a lot of construction costs out to make everything kind of look flat. So in this number, what doesn't represent some of the costs of the Alliance funding. So in this, there's an additional $10 million of funding, so it's going to be captured in net per pupil. But as a whole, if you see across Danbury, our comparables really are Norwalk and Stanford, and you'll see where we sit. The blue line is the state average per student cost. And Danbury winds up right around $13,000, $12,950 is where our current numbers sit today. The breakdown really, as Dr. Sal said, the ECS format has not been fair to Danbury. No secret, the CGF case dictated that clearly, although they didn't really find in our favor on some of that stuff. But we really are, the state of Connecticut puts in about 35 cents on the dollar, and the city of Danbury puts in the other piece. So it's continued to be ongoing. There is good news on the funding front. The funding just has to come fast enough to deal with the growth. That's the problem. Dealing with the increased growth is really the cost driver. Alliance funding. Current year Alliance funding is $9.4 million. We'll talk about this grant a lot. It is a massive, massive grant. I mean, as the folks know and read, I mean, there's a lot of teachers in that grant. This grant brought us all-day K. This grant brought us our reading supports, our ELL supports. I mean, the list goes on. A social worker in every elementary school, that came directly out of the Alliance District funding when that came through. Some of our department chairs at the middle school level, our math specialists, additional supports we've done, some of our intervention programs that folks know, the Read 180 program, it's at the middle school and high school, our System 44, and all those initiatives really came directly from the Alliance grant. The way the state writes this grant, there's an approval process we go through. So 51% is substantially new. So as I kind of joke, you can't take, the finance director who's been here and put him in the grant. You got to make a new initiative. So therefore, it's a new program like All Day K. We never had All Day K. When I got here, it was I think one classroom in each school had All Day K. With this grant, that was a new initiative under the grant. So it has a lot of benchmarks. We actually have a quarterly meeting with the state of Connecticut. They come down and review our data, making sure we're doing things correctly. A lot of oversight. With all things, money comes oversight. Now I'll get into the actual budget itself. So we kind of go through, budget breakdown really goes through salary, benefits, and general supplies and stuff. The bulk of our accounts always is salary. So current salary increases of $3.4 million. That includes all our contractual raises for all our certified and non-certified staff. We do make a projection every year of teacher retirements. No secret, between the top step and the beginning step. So we're making a projection of $875,000 for teacher retirements each year. That's a standard. We do that every year. Program improvements. So we go through the budget with Dr. Sal and Cabinet, and we break through, where our growth is, where we're seeing issues and things we need to identify for more staff. So clearly, elementary growth, we have 2 additional teachers in for elementary classroom growth. One of those, for example, is at Park Ave. They have a large 4th grade moving up, I believe, at the 5th. So those are challenges we see there. Elementary school, art, music, and PE, 2 FTs there. We'd like to increase our support services there to allow for additional teacher planning time and common planning time. 4 elementary math coaches. If folks know, a couple of years ago, we had to actually cut the coaches down in half, and we'd like to now increase those numbers up, therefore to increase those supports to both our intervention programs at the elementary level, as well as our bilingual. I mean, it's no secret, our bilingual population is growing. We need to service those kids more, and what we do every day. So there's 3 FTs there. Park Avenue Assistant Principal, there's money inside. It's currently funded out of Title I, and the idea there, Title I and Alliance, and the funding there is to move that funding out to give additional, to make that part of the operational budget, and really not allow the school to use some of that dollars for additional supports at Park Avenue School. A point 5, middle school math intervention, that's to support the Math 180 program. That's, I believe, in 6th grade. Middle school safety advocate, one of the goals there is to kind of have additional support at the middle school level. And the person's going to kind of be, we have bigger events going on throughout the day. That person could go in, also could serve as some help in high school if needed. 2.8 teachers at Westside Middle School. That's the new 7th grade. Those little things called portables that we just put in, the 8 portables on the west side. So we're going to have 7th grade, then we're going to roll up to 8th. One pupil personnel at Westside Middle School, again, growth there. That school will be at 750 in 2 years from now. Again, big, large numbers. Your middle schools now. The good news I will say on the middle school growth is kind of a side note. Both middle schools are growing about 950 to 1,000. Back in the day, there was kind of a disparity between the 2 schools, and thankfully, with Westside now coming online, that growth is kind of flattening off, so we don't see them growing further north of that 950 to 1,000. High school. The small little thing we put on the back there of 26 classrooms, as we all know, requires additional staff to do the additional kids there. Enrollment projections there have that school going about 3,500 students. Right now, today, they sit around 31,500. But the demographer confirmed again that growth coming through the line. So we see 5 additional teachers that will deal with mostly the sophomore classes. The dean of the freshman academy, a couple years ago, 3 years ago, I believe, that position was eliminated, and we're looking to get that back in. That'll deal with additional chronic absenteeism and provide additional supports for the freshmen. 1 additional counselor. We do have high counselor loads at the high school level. We're looking to get that down so kids can get more services and access counselors. Tech, we have currently one technician that services Danbury High School, and the Chromebook count will escape me now, but I'm going to take a price stab. There's probably 5,000 devices, 4,000 devices up there that he services every day. So we are looking to add additional support in the technology area as well. Special education. We do see consistent growth. We have additional needs at across the K-12 continuum for 4 FTEs there. One additional pre-K teacher. Preschool is required, and folks have asked that question a couple times. Preschool services for identified kids are required to provide by the district. It's not something we can. There's been debate about universal pre-K. This is a required program we have to run by the state of Connecticut to service those kids. 1.0 reading consultant, that's to deal with our Wilson reading program. It's an additional support to provide both teachers and our special ed teachers to help with those struggling students. 2 speech and language pathologists, also this is kind of driven by caseload. We do see increased needs for those students, and adding an additional 2 will drop some of those caseload numbers on some of those folks. Plus the hard part of speech and language is they're split between schools. So you really kind of want like a roller skates back and forth to cover everybody. Staffing projections and planning. I have to touch on this for a second because with the state funding, one of the pieces that has to happen is you kind of have to make a plan or guidance on what you would do with the additional ECS funding, because the way it's written, you have some new initiatives and you can also pay for general operating initiatives. So we obviously have some challenge with the new graduation requirements. The current grad requirements are 21. And they're going to 25 current 8th grade class. There's some debate with the legislature whether that's going to stay. There's some bills up there to kind of get that delayed further. We are, and Dr. Salvo will speak to it, the current, adding the 25 doesn't necessarily change the game for high school kids. A lot of our kids have access, a lot of them go well over 21 currently, so changing to 25 really just adds another mandate. Social emotional behavior support for K-12. Obviously, we look to identify additional resources inside that money. Classroom teachers for enrollment growth. Additional intervention supports for some of our struggling readers. Special area staff, art, music, and PE. We look at additional STEM and reading sports. Again, it's kind of just a framework of what that money would have to be used for and go towards. Not necessarily, these aren't hard and fast programs we're looking to do. This is just additional things you'd have to look at in the state model for Alliance/ECS. Employee benefits. This is I think one of the bright spots I've always said for years here. About 6 years ago, the board and the city went to a self-insurance plan. Self-insurance really is when folks go to the doctor, the board literally pays the $20 behind you. So we are in a sense self-funding our health insurance plan. There is a catastrophic coverage, so God forbid if folks had a major problem, there is insurance that sits above that. But it works not like your car deductible. At a certain level, then the actual insurance company kicks in. Benefits are $29 million with a $1.3 million increase of 4.6%. My first year, they're 18%. I've said that every year. And I opened it up and like literally cracked it open and like slammed it and closed it on my desk. 18% today, probably like a $3.5 million increase. I mean, we couldn't do anything if we were sitting at that level of renewal. A lot of school districts have very high renewals. We've actually been blessed by that. We've had good forecasting and good claims. We've also had, through bargaining with certified, non-certified, the HSA plans have saved. Folks are making different choices as far as going to the urgent care versus the hospital. Emergency room visit could be $1,500. Urgent care could be $85 or $100. So again, I'm not saying if you've got something really bad, you shouldn't go to the emergency room. But some of the small things, folks are making those choices, which has helped the district. So we do see a 4.8% renewal there. Workers' compensation is always an ongoing area for claims. Those are our slips and falls at work. And we basically self-insure those populations, so we do see high claim there. We save cost overall, always an increased exposure. Service and fees, that's $5.8 million. It does an increase of $351,000 or 6.3%. The largest increase in that area is our special education tutor population. That's primarily for contractual raises and IEP requirements. These are a lot of your one-on-one, your two-on-one. We do work really hard. Mrs. Church over here, we really do work well to try to service the kids the best way we can, and in a sense, provide that level of support where outplacement really isn't a good idea, and it's better to keep the kids in our schools. So that's an increase there. Occupational therapy or OT and PT supports, we do have increases there. It's the same thing, all driven by caseload. Enrollment comes with caseload. There's no doubt about it. It's a general theme that runs through our budget all the time. Transportation, tuition, and repairs. That's budgeted. That's a $1 million. It represents a increase of $5,100. Transportation, sorry about that. Transportation tuition are budgeted at $14 million. No way busing got that low. So that's an increase of $475,000 or 3.5%. That's where our third-year contract with STA. We did go to a all-propane fleet in the last 2 years, and as folks know, we had that the other day. We had those heavy below zero days, and in a sense, propane runs phenomenal in cold weather. We've seen additional savings in both CO2 and overall savings. Maintenance is better. I will say the new fleet has cameras on it with audio, and it's been really a great relationship with them. And cost 3.5% our renewal also is a very good contract. We do have increases in our special ed transportation as well, and our special ed tuition costs continue to increase. And these are outplacement students that could be from $50,000 to $150,000 that we're required to pay for our district. There are costs we have to incur. There is above that, the state does have, you'll hear a term called excess cost. Terminology gets weird, but the state in a sense will kick in on a high cost student. That funding has been capped off into the governor's budget. There's no increases there, so we don't see that changing much at all on that front. Especially the costs across the state have been rising. There's no secret. If you look at a lot of area school district budgets, they're big problems in their special ed increased costs. Supplies and electricity, $5 million, or represents an increase of $329,000, or 6.9%. We negotiate all of our fuels and negotiate with the city, so we kind of partnership in a joint effort on that. Our busing fuel costs, we did see a small uptick in propane cost, heating costs as well. Obviously, we've got, again, those small things like that little addition on the high school. And we're still trying to track how that building performs. It's a high efficiency building, but until you've gone through a full year on it, it's hard to project. The West Side Middle School as well, and the portables. I will say on the electricity front, there is not a building in this district that's not gone through a lighting upgrade in my time. We've either LED, changed, reduced, dimmed, or done anything we can to control those costs. And these are areas that we can truly drill down into. I'd rather give another set of books somewhere than give Eversource another $2,000 in utility rate. We've done a lot with that. We also do see additional increases in our science program for K-5. This is now a tested standard for NGSS. My elementary teachers know that. So we are going to look at a third grade program rollout for science. Equipment, dues and fees. Again, this is a small part of our budget through the years. It's $736,000. It's an increase of $250,000. The only increase in that area is in school security. We have the opportunity to get a grant funded. This is a match. The grant represents about $900,000 in funding. We have to put up roughly 25%. So this is ideally, again, to increase our camera systems, all the things we've been doing to make our schools safer and better. This support will help do that. I think in this grant, there's not a school, every school in the grant, every school in the application will get some upgrades done to it over time. We've done some, but this continues to go farther. Dues and fees, adult education, again, that's all, those are general mandates that we have to follow for our adult ed population. We are the managers of the area site, so Danbury puts in $332,000 and the other area towns put in their portion as well. So total budget, $139,976,101, or 5.85%. The breakdown goes as following. The high school expansion dollars, we continue to still see with that. That's $490,000. Your enrollment growth, about 1.2. and your total base operating cost of $5.9 million. In that number, I didn't necessarily say it too, but when we get our enrollment growth and hits in September, we can't run class size into the 30s, so we have to add staff. These are not, they're not easy things we deal with here, so in a sense, we have a lot of compounding things that happen over time. So, in other words, we might not plan for 4 more high school teachers like what happened in 1 year. So all those things compound that number. So you see that large number, and those are new staff that we've had to kind of control class size, particularly elementary, high school, middle school as well. Upcoming dates. So just so folks know the process we're going to go through now, the next stop for the budget is the mayor will make his budget presentation April 2nd at 7:30 at City Hall, Council Chambers. That will be, he'll give us full budget address. He'll unroll the allocations given to all the city departments, including Board of Education. The City Council will hold what is called an ad hoc budget committee. There is a small committee of the City Council, usually about 4 or 5 members, and Dr. Sal, myself, and the board will meet with that group. And we will then have a dialogue about our budget, different questions, kind of a Q&A with them, also a public meeting. That's a TBA, we don't have a date on that. That usually gets set, I would say about, the 8th or 9th April, give or take, I don't know yet. A public comment on the city budget, that is another date, I don't know when that will be set. That is an open forum where any member of the city of Danbury can come and speak about anything involving impacting the city budget, whether from the Board of Education budget to the sewer rates or whatever. So that's in our open meeting. The final adoption budget will be May 7th. That's at 7:30 as well at City Hall. That's where the final gavel goes down. The City Council will then act on whatever the recommendations of the various committees on what the actual increases will be. Our challenge, I'd be reminiscent if I didn't hit on these, to provide a quality education for all students, successfully pursue additional federal, state, and foundational grants to service our students and staff. On that note, I got to stop because there's not a teacher here that doesn't do a GoFundMe, and it's escaping me, the other one that we all use, Donors Choose. There's a grant here, we'll chase it down. We really are good at trying to procure grants and do things to increase service to kids, whether it's an additional after-school program, supper program. There really is, we do try to pursue as much as we can on that funding front. Pursue regionally purchasing coordination with the city and area school districts. We have a meeting once a month that meets with all the area towns, Bethel, Brookfield, looking at regional transportation, what's ride sharing for special education students. We're looking at ride sharing for our VOAG kids, cooperative purchasing. The towns are working together. It's not a case of there's a lot of those silos that exist that are breaking down. Additional cost saving contractual and general services. We will bid anything we can find if we can save something on it. Again, if it's the copy vendor, the computer vendor, I'd rather save 5 and spend it somewhere else than do that. We don't sacrifice services either, but we try to do that. Provide time for special development to our faculty and staff. Obviously, increase our teachers, support to our teachers. And that, here's Dr. Stone.
So, thanks, Joe. This was, tonight's purpose was to educate all of us about the budget and how the budget is put together. And how many pages is the budget actually?
Why ask me a question I don't know?
It's quite a book, right?
I know, I don't know.
But it's quite a book, but it all comes down to the purpose of why we're spending the money. Teachers get grants, we look for grants. The Alliance money that you saw at $10.2 million, the state says they want that to coalesce with other, have confluence, I should say, of other monies. So we have to mix our Title I money, which comes from the feds based on a free and reduced lunch, which is also going to be sunsetted this year. It's not going to increase. We have priority money that we've been getting for years. That money helps with extending the school day. They want to see all of that put together for our purposes of closing the gap. They keep saying that gap is not just the academic gap. It's exposure to curriculum. It's the PD gap in terms of preparation. There's a lot that goes with it. So this is what the budget does. We sit there and someone will say, well, did you think about this? Yeah, we thought about that, but you look at that first page, the accomplishments, that's great. If we had some more resources, we could do much more. Okay? We can't do everything, so you have to prioritize that money and try to put it where it's going to make the most good. Try to put it in the classrooms. My fear for years has been that we go to a typical urban setting. When you walk into a class of 32, 33, 34, 35, I got some classes that are pushing up there, that are 26, 27. We've got the high schools that are running high too. We have some low ones at the high school. People say, why is that? Well, you know, if you're going to offer an AP program that starts in the freshman school, it's the last in the sequence, you can't expect a youngster to start studying an area as a freshman and then ending as a senior not having the course. So we have some lower numbers. But that's the only place we seem to see that. Everywhere else, we're seeing high numbers and a lot of work. Parents go home, do you have that homework? Yeah. Okay, well, teachers have to grade that homework, get it out, give feedback. It's not just busy work. It's work that really adds to what they're doing. It takes time to do. So if we start moving those classrooms, times of number, things don't get done. Kids that just don't give them the attention that we need. This is trying to just move us forward. It's $7 million thereabouts, move us forward. We're using, you saw the coaches 2 years ago when we had that draconian cut, and we had it late. We had to reduce quite a number of folks, and we were lucky. We didn't have to let people go. We offered positions, but we lost our coaches. The first thing back last year with teachers and principals was, can you get the coaches back to help us work with kids and work with us in terms of the work that we're doing. So that money now is coming out of our title. That money used to be used to add to some of the work that we were doing. Now it has to go to some of the operational stuff. So what I'm saying to you all out here, and I keep telling the mayor and everybody else, we're using what we can. It's not a case of we have this pot here and nobody knows what's here. All of our grant money is going to this work as best we can. And the money that comes in from the community, for example, Rogers Park, we were just talking, one of the companies, which company is running it? Praxair. They're going to come in and Chick-fil-A is buying the food, they're buying the paint, they're going to come and paint and do that. That makes a difference. That's money we don't have to spend. Joseph just mentioned, I talked about security, and in the beginning I said that's one of our priorities. Well, what does that really mean as a budget? That means we have to find $250, which we did here, and we're going to keep that in the budget so that we can get $900,000 in order to do the work in school safety. So if we start making cuts in this budget, I don't go to the $250, because you leverage the $250 to almost 4 times the amount of money. So you got to find things like that, but always keeping mindful, staying away from the classroom as best we can and reducing. So we do that. So, and what happens to us typically, we'll reduce the budget down, and then our enrollment starts moving, and the board knows, and I write to them and say, boy, we have teachers coming, what are we going to do? So we wind up reallocating money and to the teachers in the classroom, and we reconstitute a class. We try to do that before September, so the kids know what to expect when they show up. So as we move through the year, you'll hear us talking about, cutting down our budget. We stop spending. Okay. But that's how we get there. But this is where we need to start, and this is the advocacy. We need your help. On the sheets of paper that we're going to give you, there are these talking points that we've talked about tonight. There's also, Joe, what do you call those things?
QR codes.
QR codes. You could get to the legislators. I will say, when it comes to Danbury, if you talk to the legislators up in for Danbury in Hartford, Danbury legislators work together. They do not split. When it comes to schools and town, they're all in, and they are helpful, and they're advocates. They've gotten a lot of things for us where other towns are fighting for, what this group wants or that group. We're together on that. And the board in the town, we have a lobbyist. We hired him a few years ago. He's up there 24/7 telling us what is going on, what's being redirected. We then can call them and they'll do something about it. In fact, he's going to be at our next board meeting to update our board about some of these things. On that sheet of paper, if you want to advocate for something, we'll ask you please to call up there. This ECS money is very important to us. What that means is up till last year, what used to happen was that legislators would go through the budget process, they'd figure how much money they'd have at the end, and then they would give it to the school. And depending on who's pulling the hardest, Some school districts will get more than others. There wasn't rhyme or reason to it, other than who had the most influence. Now there's a formula, a calculus they have to use. Malloy started it, he implemented it, and Lamont said, I'm going to also implement it. What we're saying is that we're in favor of that. Now, I know 30 urban settings that are in favor of it, but you got about 150 towns or 130 towns that are not in, because everybody is not going to get the same amount of money. The cities are going to get a little bit more, so we have people who are pushing the other way. So we need you to make a call and say this is important. Because the things that happen in the urban setting that doesn't happen anywhere else is that if you offer something for our students, I can't look them in the eye and say I'm going to have it here in 3 years. We don't have sustainability. So we're trying to create a budget that even if you cut us back, that we're going to be able to do the yeses of that budget, so we can guarantee program for your kids. Or we can guarantee certain training. I go to meetings all the time and people say, well, you can't expect us to have not trained. So we try to do that, and we try to support that. So this budget does that. So tonight was a way of trying not just talk about numbers. You can go through the pages and you can pick out some numbers on, whatever you want to pick them out on. But that goes to all of this work. And that's the conversation we have with the city, because they'll sit down and they'll want to know where we can save. Well, I'm open if you can find something. We save money by not spending money. And we're not spending money. We're spending money that we need to work in our day-by-day to operate our schools. The legislative now are putting together a regional program. We've been lucky in this region. We've been working together, so we've been saving some money for that. Transportation, little things, saves a lot of money. A bus cost us
$60,000.
$60,000. So what happened this year? We didn't know we were going to have the increase. We had a bump. So we had to add buses. Now, we might not add buses next year, but those 2 buses have to be accounted in next year's budget, that $120,000. Parents get upset, well, why can't that bus come down the road? Because if we go down too many roads, guess what we're going to need? We need more buses. And we don't want to upset people, but, sometimes you got to give the get a little bit. So this is what goes into formulating the budget. I mean, those little anecdote stories really, really special to parents, because it's their kid. Their kid is not getting the support. Their kid is not getting bused. Their kid is not getting that extra time. Or my kid isn't being challenged enough. My kid is not being pushed enough. We hear it all from A to Z. And they're right. So how do we get there? This is a way, this is a roadmap to get there for us. I want to stop. I want to listen to you if you have any questions. But I'm going to look up here. You guys have anything you want to add? No?
Just 2 seconds on what they hand out. So obviously the key dates and talking points. Below you'll see the website links and the QR codes. So that links you to your state of Connecticut, your legislative lookup. You can put in your information. It will tell you who covers your street, your area of town. Obviously it's kind of divided up depending on where. Legislatures do like to hear from folks, mostly residents. That is definitely an avenue that can voice your support of the CS format of the state. The second link is the City of Danbury. Those are city council, all the city council members. Those represents your different wards around the city. Don't ask me who goes where, that I don't know. But you guys have that links to that. And the third one is a link directly to our full budget document up on our website. So with that, we can do a Q&A.
Yeah, we can try to break down into some groups that have conversation. We could try to, pardon? We could do that, or we could try to just do a Q&A from here.
I mean, that mic's on if folks want to do that.
Why don't we start that way, questions and answers. Mr. Janelli?
Joe, what is the formula for the special ed excess cost reimbursement? And is that something that we could advocate to legislators to change?
Right now, the cost formula is 4.5 times your net per pupil. So that sounds like total jizz. So it's basically any cost over about $65,000 for an outplaced child. The state of Connecticut is supposed to reimburse anything above that cost. Problem is, the state only funds that at about 70 cents on the dollar. So a lot of times we get significantly less of those dollars back. Some of that money also flows through the city. It comes back to the board, so it's not directly a net handoff over. But also in Governor Lamont's budget, he capped the special ed costs. So in other words, the grant has always been, let's say, projected at $150 million, but the state only funded at $120 million. will now go to Vermont and say, you know what, I'm just going to cap it at 120. Let's not make it like we're going to go there and we can't. So I mean, I would argue that that's a cost that's hitting districts across the state. It's a unique problem that folks are dealing with. I mean, whether, you know, all of our neighbors, I can tell you, I talked to many of them, they've all got very similar problems with that. So that's where excess cost kicks in. It's supposed to be, again, like an insurance plan. It's where the state steps in, but it doesn't work very well. If our health insurance plan ran that way, it would be way worse shape.
But it is a subject where we can advocate for change.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely a thing the legislation will take up when they finally act.
Thank you.
Got a hot mic here, hot mic.
So our identification rate of support for sped is about 13%. That is extremely low for the state. Nationally, it's also low for urban settings, which is about 17%, which means that a lot of kids are integrated most of the time in our classrooms. So we support that work in terms of trying to make sure that our kids are being educated locally and they're getting support. So this money that we're talking about has nothing to do with that. This money has everything to do with outplacement. Kids that need a placement that is severe and we can't support it because we don't have the numbers to support the program or the type of certified individuals who do it. So these are outplacements. And sometimes an outplacement happens July 1st, they have to establish the budget. Those are things that really impact the budget that we cannot plan for. But you got to do the right thing and make sure the youngsters get the programs that they need. So this is why that fund exists. So what Mr. Gentleman is talking about, to advocate for it, is to make sure that they fund it. Because one of the things that could hurt severely is if they're going to fund it at 7% and they cut back to 30%, you can see how it's going to impact. You know?
Question.
So those are all difficult things. Yes.
Rhoda Geider. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Morris Street School. I also live in Danbury, and my children went through the Danbury Public Schools, and they're great young adults. So thank you. Dr. Sal, thank you for supporting Morris Street School all the time. I appreciate it. So do the rest of the teachers at my school. There was one thing, or I'm thinking about one thing that I didn't see in the budget. There was nothing about bringing back kindergarten aides or first grade aides. You took them away a number of years ago, and I think it's something I'm sure you thought about. Could you give us your thinking about that and why that was not listed up on your information?
I don't know if I have a good explanation, honestly, except this. We're doing what we can with the money that we have. Right? And we don't find the opportunities to do some other things. I said before, if we can achieve this with the resources that we have, what could we do if we had more resources? That's one of them. That's one of them. That's a great example of that. Okay? Now, that walked away because at the time we had some severe cuts to make decisions to maintain the kindergarten program, you know, whatever the reason was. I mean, you know, 6 of one, half dozen nothing. We needed to get to a bottom line, and we did. If I had the chance to reinstate it, that would be a possibility. If, in fact, we didn't have to use the Title I money as the way we're using it. Now we have to use it to support the coaches. If we didn't have to do that, that would be one that I would say, if we get everybody to read by 3, and then learn after 3, right? That's what I would love to do, is to put the help, as much help as we can at the K-1 level, because it's really needed there, there's no doubt. So that's something strategically we look at, but it's one of the things that we don't do, you know, because we just wind up making sure our classes don't run 29. You know, and there are some programs, there's kindergartens that are 26. I know that. The goal the board had some years ago, and it's keeping it at 2022, right? And you know, we can't get there all the time. Sometimes we can achieve that, but that's why. I mean, it's the best explanation I can give. It hasn't entered into here, other than until I can see some resources.
We did add the SOBI pairs back in. That was K. That spanned the K-5 group. It's not targeted to K. Let me clear it. You know that.
Thank you, Joe. Wow.
We covered such a good job, Dr. Salvo.
Yeah, well, I think that.
Hi, I'm Kathy Sill both my children are in Danbury, one's at the high school, one's in 8th grade, so that's my questions about the 8th grade graduation requirements for those students. Do you anticipate that going back to 21, and how about if it doesn't, teachers for all those extra credits?
4 commissioners ago, it was decided that Connecticut was behind the 8 ball, and this is how they decided that. That when they did an analysis across the country, they found that the average states had 25, each state had about 25 credits needed for graduation, however you want to count the credits. And Connecticut had 21, and that wasn't acceptable. So someone said, we need to have 25. Kind of, up here it makes a little, some sense. But in actuality, it really doesn't make sense. So what it does for us, we have a lot of our youngsters that are challenged. We offer a number of courses. As I said before, we offer courses. One thing wonderful about, my kids went to a large high school of 3,500. You could get anything you want, and we still try to do that, even in advance. So it's a wonderful opportunity for our kids. So to keep that, we keep it comprehensive. Comprehensive means not only do you have core curriculum, but you have the electives, which makes it a wonderful opportunity for our youngsters, almost like a liberal arts education. And our kids make themselves available to them. All about 200 kids, we figure, leave us without having 25. They're somewhere between 21 and 25. Okay. Someone thought that maybe the 21 that Sal had needs to be better by making it 25. I don't know what the logic behind that, other than it's going to make me take some courses that I may not want to be in. It's also going to make me take some courses that are going to negate the fact that I can't leave and do some vocational career exploration because of the time that I need to spend in doing that. No one paid attention to it. And in fact, for Danbury, you talk about the first grade aides, here's where it's going to go. I'm telling you right now. If the graduation requirements go in, it can cost us between $700 to $1.2 million, depending how the kids take those classes. It's not a bad thing, but in light of everything else, why do it, right? Why are you doing another unfunded mandate? So we have Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, Connecticut Association of Boards of Education are supporting maybe leaving the decision local. If some district wants 25, that's okay. If some want to have 22 or 21, let them decide. So that's what's going to happen. Right now, Kathy, the kids that are leaving 8th grade, they're on 25. If you look at the program of studies, it has the courses and the sequence for 25. And they're just going to have to take more classes.
When do you think you'll know?
Probably by July 1st. When Ryan comes next week, our lobbyist, I will ask him. It's been kind of silent. I haven't heard much, about it. So right now, we're assuming it's going to happen. Behind you, Joe.
Hi, everybody. I'm Annie Tucci. I'm up at the high school. So we switched over to our block schedule this year, and I think, in my experience with teaching, it's been a great experience overall. And with Flex and all the things that we've been doing, so there's been a lot of positive, but I know it's also been quite difficult, especially if those graduation requirements do stay. What's in the budget for, with the 4x4 so that we can get 8 classes instead of 7 for students to take?
High school, when we went to high school, we had 8 periods or 7 periods, right? So what we have now, we typically see was using time differently. One of the principles that we use is that, the variable needs to be time, not the learning. Learning needs to be constant. So if that's the case, you can organize time. So at the high school, kids can do more work during their time they're spending with teachers. Instead of breaking up the day, not finishing the work, and then having extra labs. So they went to it, our high school went to what we call a block schedule. And 4x4 simply means the 8 periods that we normally used to have in high school, you have 4 one day and 4 another day. So that's what a 4x4 means. Our high school could not do that. Our high school had to do what I call, a 6 and a skinny, or 7 and a skinny.
Yeah, we have the...
Okay, what that meant was that by putting another period in there will cost us 1/8 more money. So it all comes down to that. If you think about that, that means a kid takes another course, and they should take another course. I, for one, don't want kids sitting in study halls. We're trying to eliminate that time. There's too many things up there for kids to do. So we couldn't afford to do that. So we didn't do what we call a 4x4. We had to run the schedule. High school is looking at now an approach to do it. I'm a little skeptical, we'll tell you, that maybe would bring back 4x4 and not cost us that money. I don't know if that's going to happen. So we'll see. But that was the reason why. And the flex period they're talking about, that's been wonderful. It's a special program where a youngster can organize their time. When do you hear a clap for high school schedule? That's great. Really, a kid gets a teacher wants to see Sal because I need a makeup. Well, I can't do it because I work after school, or I can't do it because I'm playing. Yeah, there was a number of legitimate reasons why I can't do it. Although, you don't make it up, it's going to impact your grade and your standing. This flex period allows me to be scheduled into that teacher's class to do the makeup, or some follow-up work, or a student gets to wants to spend some time on a special project. Some students want to spend some time in the gymnasium. They're playing basketball. That's great too, some of it. So it's a mix, but they started this year with a flex period. And it's run like a regular period. Kids schedule themselves, there's an accountability, there's an attendance. We know who's not where, and go up and look for them. So it's their first year, and it's really worked out to support the youngsters pretty well. And we don't have the problem that we used to have after school, where kids would just cut out and not stay, not do their work. They don't do their work, guess what happens to their grades? It goes south on them. And the kids have all the ability, they're just not there to do the work. So that flex period is what we're talking about. That's staying, right? That's staying, and they're looking at what they're going to do with another period. Here's a question.
First of all, I wanted to answer the question. Couldn't answer it. It's 57 pages. I looked at
I gotta have one number I get wrong every night.
You were talking about class time, and I was thinking about first of all, my name is Mark Stanton. I have 2 children in Danbury public schools and one at Habitat.
You have a guest with you?
No, actually my daughter. She's a student here at Rogers Park. I have a son who's at the high school and one who's at Habitat. I was thinking about the alternating Tuesday early releases, and I was wondering is that a budget item? I teach in a different school district. I'm not sure how the teachers feel about the early release Tuesdays. I know my children love it, but when I was a parent of an elementary schooler, there was put a kind of a burden on the parents to get home there. Now that they're older, I'm more or less indifferent. But I was wondering if that's going to be a couple things. Is that going to be an ongoing thing now forever, or and is that a budget item that's I'm sure you're looking at things to see how effective that program is, and I'm not really asking about the program, but that's what I was wondering.
Thank you for the question. It is something that we've done some modification to it, particularly in a few of the heavy months like November, where there's some heavy dismissals. The board has asked us to review it. We've had half days. We're trying to move away from some of that as best we can. And we're still working on some ideas. But you asked about the question, is it money? Well, I can tell you, some of it is money, right? And is it effective? Some places it's more effective than others. It is. And we try to get better at that, so I don't want to say it's effective. It can be, and it does vary. But the purpose of it is that if you ask the teachers, some of them, they need more time. We're in a new computer program, or we have some other new curriculums. We need time to do that. Now, they spend time, but people don't realize that when we dismiss the students for an hour, the teachers buttressed another hour and a half to it. They stay here till, a total of about three hours. Okay, they have 5 hours a week. They put time to that, so they're here quite a bit. So the students get to go home, but they get to stay till 4:30, 5 o'clock, and they work. And we were doing it twice a month, only because you're not going to get the results that we're getting by doing the same thing that we're doing, and we weren't getting the results. Some teachers get the results no matter what you do. They're that terrific. There's those of us that need some more training, no question, and we need to model some of that good work that some of the teachers are doing. We try to do it during PD. And if we don't have that PD time, then we won't we will not be able to implement the programs at the level that we should be. And it just takes time. So either we have 180, somebody help me, we have 180 student days, and we have 7 teacher days, right? So if I had 190 days, then we wouldn't have to do the Tuesdays, and we could say extra, which would make everybody happy, right? And then we could do our training, but we don't have that luxury. If you were to do it, each day would cost me somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000. So put the numbers together, and you could figure out, is it financial somewhat? Is it needed? Absolutely. Is it effective? In some cases. In some cases, it's not as effective. But that's how we use those days. But the board has looked at what can we do differently. So we looked at starting a little later with them in terms of the time of the year in September. We looked at removing time away from November because of Thanksgiving and the other holidays that are there, and then picking up basically second semester a little bit more when we have to do some of the work. We're working with teachers. They do something what we call a TT reevaluation, working when they can work their time in. So we're trying to do a lot in that hour dismissal. We would rather not doing it. I think that's 100% if we had the time. But I don't know how I would look the board in the eye and say, you know, we're investing all this money and this is what we're training the teachers, because we wouldn't be training the teachers. Just being a teacher, you would understand this. We're putting in some of the specials at the elementary. If we can do that, we're hoping that that'll give teachers time to work together, because that's so important. Because right now, some of that afternoon time that we're going to lose next year, they're not going to be able to work together, which is not a good thing. Sometimes that's much more important than the PD work that we're going to do when they work together. And that comes right from them. And I would agree with that. So we're trying to find that.
One last thing related to that from a cost standpoint, being it just shifts the current transportation tiers around, it's not a big cost. It's a minimal cost, if anything at all. We did the new contract. It just moves around the current busing tier. If we added a day or something like that, that would truly add cost. Because we're just shifting folks around the current tier with drivers, it's not a cost, thankfully.
Hi, I'm Pat Johnston. I am a parent of 2 children at Danbury High School. And from that standpoint, I want to support the budget and the teachers. And I am also the chairman of the Board of Ed. And from that standpoint, I appreciate people coming out here and supporting the budget. And I'm asking sincerely, because those of us on the board support the budget, anybody who grabs one of these sheets and calls up or emails state legislators and let them know that Danbury needs the money that we're promised, because we're all here trying to do the best that we can. And Joe does magic with the money that we get in, but it's about $30 million a year short. That $30 million is not over the last 15 years. That's $30 million that we get shorted every year by the state. And the more of you guys that can call them up, let your legislators know that, and let them know that we need that for our kids, the better off we are. Let your friends know that. Make copies of this. Give them the address, because like Dr. Sal was saying, they listen. You know, when they hear from you, they know that you're their voters and they want to make you happy and they want your kids to get educated. So I just want you to know that we really appreciate everybody who came out here to listen to this, because as exciting as Joe and Sal can make it, it can be a little dry.
If you think of a question, just call me.
Yeah.
Here's a question.
Hi, I'm Christina Sweeney. I have 2 kids in Danbury, and this might not be a question for you, but maybe for people more experienced with Danbury politics. I'm happy to call and contact state representatives. I think they tend to be very supportive. My question is the city. Last year I went to the budget hearing and there were like a couple parents there. I would love nothing more than to have like a train of parents walking up to that microphone and telling the city to support the budget. But the fact, you know, we talk a lot about the state. We also, it seems to me, unless I'm missing something, need to really put pressure on the city as well, yes?
It always helps. And there's a lot of people here. If everybody here goes there, it looks like a big crowd inside of City Hall. So that doesn't take thousands. I mean,
So we need to wait for that to be announced public comment.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's two. There's the ad hoc and then the public comment.
So during spring break, yes.
yeah. That's the other part about politicians. They know when to make things at the right
But yeah, the link in there goes straight to all your city council folks from Joe Cabo on down.
So if we have some more snow days, we cancel spring break, is that what it is?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Maranowski. My son is in Shelter Rock School, special ed student. I have a question. How do we get parents more organized? What avenues do we use? To parent-teacher organizations? Because there are people that care, they just don't know about this, and they just need to be informed, and that's how we mobilize people. So how do we do it? What do we have to do?
PTO is very supportive. We meet once a month. If you walked around town, you notice those signs didn't say, well, we need subs. Anybody wants a sub? You can call my office. We have to get you to work. The other sign was supporting tonight, right? We put them around town. We sent a robocall home last night. I know I got one at home as well, right? So if you would just call 2 other people and have them go with you, that would be what I would suggest to do. So they actually go. Our PTO supports it. But as Joe said, and someone else said, thank you for going there, people don't go. You might not get what you want, but it's nice for them to know you support it. The Board of Ed here in Danbury has always supported the budget. They have not cut my budget once. They really haven't, right? And they're sensitive to the municipal needs, all right? But you communicating it as a resident makes a difference. So if you can do something like that.
So just to be clear, you want us to go to City Hall to this meeting in April?
Well, if you look at this,
Yeah,
it's your open meetings,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Where you're able,
Okay.
as long as you're a resident,
As long as you're a
right?
resident, you're allowed to
You're able to
speak at the meeting.
Okay.
They'll ask you if you're a resident.
And we're ready.
So that's what it takes.
And sometimes if you just have one person or 2 people speak, but everybody stands up who supports that, that works big too. It works in ours. Come visit us at the Board of Ed too. Love to see it. Make the politicians know that this is what you want, this is what you need.
Just to piggyback off of that question on parent involvement, Emmanuel, I'm a member of the Board of Education, just to address, I guess, one of the, let's say, the unspoken question here in the room too, when you're looking at the demographics of our district and why we don't have, a room full of parents, and when you look at the makeup of some of our schools, I think it's also going to take some creativity in using the PTOs as a tool, but then have members of the PTO who are well versed in the budget to then be deployed as teams to meet people in the community where they are. Sort of like the Mrs. Horn model, right? Really meeting them where they are. So maybe if you are a parent and you're here and you're part of a PTO, maybe you want to talk about that in your meetings to see if there's a member that could go to maybe local churches, a member that's bilingual, or if they know somebody that's bilingual, that can go into community gatherings, especially within our minority communities, Latinos, Brazilian, Ecuadorians, Portuguese civic groups, so that they can come. We have a group of women here who are here using our aides as translators, but they want to hear, so I encourage you guys who are here with us tonight to be messengers to the community. Take on, you're taking a leadership step tonight by being here, so I want to empower you to go back to your community groups and share the message that you heard today. Thank you.
It's on there?
Good evening, my name is Aswad Chain, and I have my son in Westside Academy, and he's going to be going to high school next year. I just came from that meeting to make sure that happens. And I think we as parents, we have a big fight, and I think we need to be prepared in order to go to City Hall and tell them that we found anybody, any city council supports on this budget, or even the mayor for that matter, that we're gonna talk, you should be happy with this proposed budget. Because with all due respect, if I was Dr. Sal, I would have proposed 240 million. Of course they would have thought, of course they would have said, you're crazy. Absolutely. Because that I would bring the conversation and make them to realize how underfunded our schools are. And I think that's what we need to do. And just one more thing, just to add to the lady right there about pre-K and stuff like that. I think we, all these things is stressing short-term investments. But I think we're not doing much in long-term investments. And I think scientifically it's been shown that the critical formation in human nature takes place from 0 to 4. If all our kindergartens or our children from 3, 4 years are not being educated, they don't have the skills in order to succeed. So it doesn't matter how much money we're going to be throwing at them when they grow up there. It's not going to help that much. I mean, it's going to help, of course, but not as much as we invest when they're 3 and 4 years old. And I think that's what we should educate to the city council, and cannot take it, and we will not take 1 penny to take down from this proposed budget. Thank you.
Going once? Yep, to the right. Who's more strict man?
Hi, I'm not going to say anything original except this. Emmanuel, that's you over there, right?
It is. I changed my hair. Hi.
I know. Me too. So,
I like yours.
And I like yours. What you said was just really very important about going out to like your church or your community group or to the public about this, because as Dr. Sal was saying about the signs for substitute teachers and stuff, well, we have the sign for the meeting right in front of our school. You can walk by a sign very easily and not read it. I can't even find my glasses right now, okay? But when someone actually speaks to you, so, sir, you gotta find your church, you gotta find somebody else's church. You gotta find specific groups. I will help you write the song. But because you speak so eloquently and so fervently, you kind of speak like an angel, which is great, but you don't have to speak like an angel if you just tell some people about that meeting, which is to be announced, and the other one to be announced. And yes, at least one of them is going to be during spring break. That is guaranteed. But you got to tell them the signs aren't going to make it. Even the phone calls, the robocalls, they're very easily ignored. Okay? It's going to take that personal touch. If you can do that, that would be wonderful. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Hi, this is Soraya Bilbao. I'm an ESL teacher at Danbury High School. And from the 4 meetings listed on the flyer, if you had to select, like, in order of importance of being there, if you had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be the ones that we should do everything possible to attend? Of course, all of them, but...
I would say the initial one coming up is the initial presentation of the actual budget from the mayor. So that is where the initial numbers are released. I think that's a nice stage setter, as far as that goes. Including public comment, I think that is a beginning of the other meetings that go further, including all important. But when you get to the May meeting, typically the budget has been approved by the ad hoc. I mean, it's kind of at that point moving its way through the line. So I would say the first and the first 3 really are the bigger meetings. Last, by the time it comes to there, it's typically been settled, and at least the ad hoc has approved whatever either the mayor recommended, they made an adjustment, the ad hoc, one or the other, and and then it comes to the full for a vote. That's my sense.
Thank you.
Good question?
Anyone else? Okay, if you think of something, just call.
Yeah.
And we'll try to answer it. If we can get you some materials for a group that you find, all right, we can help you out. City, I think the city will work with us, but they need to hear from the residents. That's the best thing I can tell you. You're going to hear from us. We're the policymakers. You know, we're going to do that. We need to step up as residents. That part, you're exactly right. Thank you for that. It's really important, as Mr. Johnson says, very important. Thank you very much for coming.